Great. Great job. Great job. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you, Jason. Jeff. Now, on stage, talking about Nexon's evolution as an early pioneer in free-to-play gaming, I'd like to welcome to the stage Owen Mahoney, President and CEO of Nexon, and he will be interviewed by Mike Vorhaus, President of Magid Advisors. Please welcome him to the stage.
Thank you. Everybody hanging in there this afternoon? Properly caffeinated, I hope? It's a real pleasure to have Owen here. An American living in Tokyo, that's probably not that uncommon. Running a company that started in Korea, that's probably a little uncommon. Spent a bunch of time at EA, which we're both very fond of. And I actually hadn't had a chance to tell you, but I got deathly ill once at a meeting, literally almost deathly ill at a meeting at Pointcast.
Really?
Which you and I may be the only people here that remember Pointcast, but
it was old enough.
Yeah, and that too. A broadband application before we had broadband. Cal alumnus, surprise, surprise, in Asian studies. And I have to say, probably one of the nicest, smart, hardworking guys in the industry. So thanks for joining us, Owen.
Thank you.
Well, Nexon, been there, what, 4 or 5 years now, coming on. CEO for the last couple of years. Couple big transactions during your period. Give me a sense of kind of what about Nexon made you want to go there, and kind of how are you seeing things shaping up?
Well, by way of quick background for the people in the room who are not familiar with Nexon, because we're actually relatively small in the United States, we were founded in Korea, as you mentioned. We moved our headquarters to Japan about 10 years ago. We're headquartered in Japan now and listed on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. We listed in the end of 2011. We do about $1.8 billion US in revenue a year. We operate typically around 35% or so operating income margins. Our largest region is China. Our second largest is Korea, and our third largest is Japan. US and Europe together make up less than $100 million of our total, so they're very small as a percentage if you look at the pie chart, but they're both growing very quickly. So that's the background on us. What was your question again?
No, that was what got you there?
Oh, what got me there? Oh, so, well, Nexon, you mentioned Pointcast. When I was at Pointcast, I actually met the founder, and they were in a room. The whole company was in a room about the size of 4 times this table. I mean, it was really, really small, and I visited them. And then when I joined EA in late 2000, by then they had become the second largest game company in Korea, and we're now the largest in Korea. And what impressed me so much when I visited them from EA was, again, this is dating you and me a little bit, but it was late 2000. EA had invested several $100 million. The rough number is about $400 million in a very smart idea, which was that the internet was going to change the games business. We laugh at this now for being so blindingly obvious, but in those days, EA was the only large company that was really thinking about this in a very forward way. The problem was, and the challenge was, that if you haven't had a lot of experience in online, it's actually very, very hard to change the core of your company from a packaged goods business to an online business. And Nexon was one of the few companies around the world that was very forward-thinking. So what they showed me when I first visited them in 2000, or the second time I visited them in 2000, just really blew my mind. And it was incredible creativity, not around graphics fidelity and polygons on the screen and story-driven, but about setting up gameplay that was fun, easy to learn, but very hard to master between thousands of people at that time in their country, in Korea. And Korea itself was, of course, way, way ahead of the US and Europe in termes of online gameplay, and still is, in my opinion, to this day. It was very fast broadband, very cheap, and everybody had it. It reached saturation of about 45 million people, which is the total number of the population in Korea. It reached saturation somewhere around 2004, 2005. 100% saturation. That means every man, woman, and child has broadband. And so it was way ahead of the United States. And it was very fast broadband as well. So Nexon, NCSoft, a lot of the game companies that were early on pioneers were way ahead in terms of thinking. So that got me very interested. I tried to buy Nexon at that time. Jay turned me down, invited me to come over and work for him. I turned him down.
You don't want to tell us the price by any chance that you
No, I don't. No,
okay. Less than 1.8 billion.
You would throw me out of the room as a business person if it was. And then later on, I tried to buy Nexon again, and Jay invited me over again. And then late in my time at EA, around 2009, we tried again, and he said, thanks, but no thanks, and invited me over. By the fourth time, I lost or won, or whatever the case may be, but I came over to Nexon. So all along the way, what impressed me about Nexon, it was very forward-thinking about online specifically.
And building on top of that proud heritage, what's your strategic plan over the medium and near-term future?
Well, we come at it from a very particular angle, which to game makers, and so a lot of the people in this room would seem very obvious. But to a lot of the games industry, particularly recently, unfortunately, a lot of the games industry, in our opinion, doesn't think this way. But the core principle is that games are very much an art form. And that if you want to build a game company that's sustainable over time and that grows over time, you've got to build great game art. And great game art tends to, and by great game art, the core factor that you sort of judge a game on is whether it's fun or not. It's that simple. And like all art, you sort of know it when you see it. And you think about the game when you're not playing it. You really want to play the game again. You enjoy talking about it with friends, like all great art. But unlike other game art, particularly online games, is the one art form where you write your own story. And other game or other art, like books and music and movies and so on, they will tell you a story, and you sit and watch what some scriptwriter and set of directors have given you. In games, particularly online games, on PC, mobile, any other platform, the game emerges from the gameplay between the players. And those are the games we like. Some people will think of us as a free-to-play game company. We invented free-to-play, in Korea many years ago, but we think of ourselves as an online game company. And we like the fact that great games emerge from that. So when we think about our forward plan, with that as context, we think that the most important thing is that we create good games, great games. And again, it seems blindingly obvious. Unfortunately, we don't meet a lot of companies that are at least talk about it quite in the way that we think about it. That's number one. And then the other thing about online games is it's actually really, really hard to do live game operations and live game development and build a game so it builds up over time. The technical aspects of running a client-server system that can really support gameplay, particularly in an MMORPG, or a sophisticated game, is actually very hard to do. And so we want to. So that's an expertise that we've had that we've been able to build up. And the other aspect is live game development. So if you want to build a game that, like many of our games, have gotten bigger and bigger over a period of more than a decade, you have to invest a lot in live game development, meaning putting new things into the game. Many companies don't realize this, and that's probably part of the reason why their games tend to go up quickly and then go down quickly. So a lot of what we've been doing the last year and a half since the new management team took over is to sort of sweep out the sort of the brush that had developed and then go back to that core, because that's a very strong core. And it's proven itself over and over again. And the companies that we respect around the games industry in Asia and in the West tend to have that same orientation. And they've been able, as a result, to build up their companies in a very healthy way over time.
I love the fact that you think of yourself as a story platform versus a storyteller, which is what all the other mediums are. Can you give us a little...
That's the best part about the games business. That's what I love about the art form.
It's a real empowerment. What kind of things you think... Give us a little hint of what we might see over the next 2-3 years as you guys focus back on the core and focus on making it possible for people to build their own stories. You have some exciting stuff that you can hint at least?
Well, sure. You might have read about some of the deals that we've done with Western game developers, but we've done several in Asia as well. We have been looking hard over the last 2 years for game companies that have a similar approach to online games that we do, and it's been surprisingly hard. We talk to a lot of game companies who are not really focused on the art of games. They're focused on first and foremost on the business of games. So you ask them, hey, what's the game you're making? And it's sort of like a scene out of The Player. Did you ever see that movie where they're like, yeah, we got this license, and it's going to be sort of like this game, but a little bit different, and this is how many polygons we're going to put on the page. And you go, okay, well, what's the game? Why is this fun? We have been able to find some that we're really excited about, though, and we like to do things where we can combine something that we're good at, particularly live game operations and live game development, and bringing your game around the world. So be successful in Asia, which is a gigantic market and extremely hard in practice to go and be successful in. We like to combine that with the things that those game developers know and can bring to us, and that's fun for us. So, for example, we've got an arrangement that we've been talking about with Cliff Bleszinski, and that game is looking really good. We're very excited about that. I think he is excited. He and his team are very excited about the opportunity to bring that around the world, the game Lawbreakers. We've also created an arrangement with Lego and Warner for bringing a fully featured Lego MMORPG around the world. And so that's going to be big. We partnered with Square Enix for Final Fantasy XI, and we're going to put that on mobile, bring that around the world. And so both kind of companies that are in the East and coming West, and companies in the West and going East. We also launched very successfully MapleStory 2 on PC in Korea. We're going to be bringing that around the world. We've been talking about Ghost in the Shell, which is a fantastic first-person shooter that we're going to be bringing. We developed it in Korea. It's a franchise that's very well known in Japan, but we're going to be launching it first in the West. So that's pretty cool, and the game plays really well. So a combination of both those two, Western developers going East and around the world, and Eastern developers going
Can I pimp out Shiver a little bit?
You can talk about Shiver, absolutely.
Give us a couple sentences on Shiver, if you would.
Well, we launched, we're very excited. Shiver is founded by a guy named John Shappert. John and I worked together for a lot of years.
A guy we know quite well, who we love.
Yeah, and John's
love you, John.
John's a fantastic guy, and his team is working on a couple games that we haven't announced really that much publicly, but we'll be talking about them a lot more coming up.
Yeah, they're the only cool guys in Key Biscayne.
Yeah.
Because I think that's...
Well, I don't know the area that well, but he is great. And of course, we've had Dominations. Dominations was Tim Train and Brian Reynolds, and we launched that in the United States, and then we've had a lot of success in Asia with that game. So it's worked out really well for us. Okay, so let's come back to this important core strength of you guys in terms of free-to-play. I don't know that everybody, I mean, God forbid people think Facebook or Zynga invented free-to-play. That would ruin... A lot of people do.
That would ruin a lot of my days. So give us a little bit of the history and give us a little sense of how the West is adapting to free-to-play.
Well, we could talk all day about that. I won't bore everybody. The free-to-play started the story, because of course success has a lot of fathers. We had a game called Quiz Quiz in Korea, and it was a subscription game on PC, and it was basically going down. And our team, this is long before I was there, but the team there was very smart, and they said, look, we got nothing to lose. It's about to go away anyway. Let's give it away for free. And our MAU number, our monthly active user number, skyrocketed when we made it free, because that's usually a pretty appealing price point.
Do you remember the increment? 10 times, 5 times?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Well, I wasn't there. I could look it up, but I don't know. It was significant. And then they started experimenting with giving away little items within the game. And we found that some were really, for $1 here, $1 there. So the point of the story is that it didn't start out as a monetization strategy or a business strategy. It started out as an idea of how to help your customers or your gamers have more fun in the game. And so you might be interested in spending $1 here, $1 there to make your game experience much more fun. And it took off. And not long after, our then head of development, and once again he's returned, our now head of development, said, let's try this on other games. And we started trying it on then live subscription games, and it worked across all of them. And we realized that the core idea of a game where 90% of your players don't pay anything, that 90% still has a great time in your game and really enjoys it. And then the 10% that do buy something in your game are going to make their game experience that much more fun for them. That's a win for the customer and a win for the company, because as a business that works out well. My take from watching how this sort of developed, in 2006, 2007, you go to Seoul and you look at how the world was developing, and then you come back to California, on that flight that comes in and lands in the afternoon, and it's a totally different market. It was all packaged goods here, and it was all online there, and it was becoming quickly all free to play, and here nobody was talking about microtransactions or free to play. As microtransactions and free to play started to become a thing in the West, my perception, right or wrong, is a lot of people who were introducing that thought of it as a business model and a way where they looked at the economics and they said, gee, I could really charge more than I ever would have charged in a packaged goods game or in a download. And so they took a very different viewpoint to it. And I think that our industry is probably still suffering some from that. If you think about it as a business model and as a way to pull money out of people's pockets, you stop thinking about retention. And the name of the game is retention. And to get retention, you have to have a game that's fun over a long period of time, because you can fool people once, but they don't come back, and it's death to your game. And we've made those mistakes before. It's not like we haven't made them, but it is not good for the industry, and it's not good for your company, your game, but it is also not good for the industry. So it's something we've sort of learned.
Who do you see in the West getting it a little bit more than the others?
Valve.
For sure.
I have enormous respect for those guys. Probably Blizzard as well. I mean, they're really, these are very thoughtful people.
And all dedicated to the game.
Very dedicated to the game. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly your point.
Yeah.
Well, let's cover, we got to get to we're not going to talk about sex, but we are going to talk about the sexy topics, if that's okay. So sexy topic number one. Well, seriously.
Please, go ahead.
I mean, right? I mean, these are sexy topics. VR.
Mm-hmm.
Sexy topic number one.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Where do you think it's going? What's the timeline?
Well, I don't want to take a contrarian opinion from the person who just appeared on stage before me.
He seemed pretty psyched.
He seemed pretty psyched. Well, as a customer, I'm really psyched about VR. We're not currently investing heavily in VR. I question what the timeline is. Right now, we have a 0 billion unit industry. To be consumer, take it from a business perspective first and then come back to the art aspect of it, because you have to take it from both angles in the games business, I think. From a business perspective, we're probably, I don't know what the experts think, you're an expert. How many years away are we from 10 million units? That's a consumer number, right?
Do I have to answer that question?
Tell me what your...
3 to 5.
3 to 5, okay, so...
Because we're including the low-cost units.
Sure, so what's low cost, $350, $350?
No, and these, $10 Google Cardboard.
Right, on top of it.
Which would be $100.
But is it the real experience, right? So I think everybody in this room will probably own a $350 Oculus or equivalent as soon as they can get their hands on one. I know I will. But it takes a while to get to the actual numbers where it becomes a consumer device. So it'll take some time to get there. So it just seems early for us, even though every day there's an email, every day there's a discussion at some panel about VR. From an art perspective, I think we're talking, from a games art perspective, the question that I keep asking is, where's the game? And I would like to see a game, I use it and I'm blown away by what I see. It's everything that everybody says. But I still go back to, the reason why I keep playing a game for 40, 50, 100 hours, 200 hours is because I love the game. And I can envision some things happening, but you also have to remember that when you put on a VR headset, you are literally shutting out the rest of the world, and so it cuts you off. It's the opposite of the mobile phone opportunity. It's not accessible. It's kind of definitionally inaccessible for the people around you, and it cuts you off from the outside world. I don't even know where my Red Bull is when I'm playing a first-person shooter, so that's sort of an issue.
Okay, well, we have time to talk about one more sexy topic. Mm-hmm. Anybody want to guess what it is? Come on. Gambling. Come on, Craig. What is it? Esports. Thank you, Craig. Esports. Tell us about, you're living in the part of the time in the land of esports. Oh,
Korea is absolutely where we were founded, is the place for esports. We have a Nexon Arena. This is the future of esports. Nexon Arena seats 550 people in downtown Gundam, which if anybody's ever been there, they know it's the party area. And we do 300 events a year in this arena, and it's huge. And it's broadcast on TV. It's a big deal. So I'm a big believer in that. It hasn't quite hit here in that sort of way. I was at the Hearthstone semifinals yesterday, and it is not quite as big here as it is there. But I believe that the future is big, so I'm very excited about it.
People are buying teams.
They are.
Yeah.
And you guys have been writing about it.
Yeah, we got a few guys with that. It's something to brag about at their cocktail parties.
Exactly.
All right, thanks a lot, Owen.
Thank you. Yeah, good to see you. Thanks.